Welcome back to Scary Stories with Eek once again, where we tell scary stories, spooky stories, goofy stories, internet
Sometimes
stories.
we'll tell stories that make you pee all over yourself, like ye old Mr. Mahoney. Definitely watch that video. Cheap plug for you right off the bat.
Yes, that video was awesome. We really liked that story, so go check that one out after this. Don't leave though. Look out for Declan's series starting later this month. He's going to be doing an SCP series, and I don't know what that means. So if you don't know what that means, you can learn with me. He's gonna bring us through a bunch of different stories every week for almost 2 months. So if you stick along, you will be fluent in SCP. Today we're doing another r slash no sleep story by the username Grand Theft Motto. Declan's impartial to that name. I think it is cool and creative. So it's something fun. This story is called Something Happened 63 Years Ago That's Haunted Me My Entire Life. It begins with It's official. I'm an old man. For the last couple years, I've comforted myself by saying I'm in my early 70s, but math is simple and unforgiving. Today is my 75th birthday, and God did the years fly. I'm not here for your well wishes. This is hardly a milestone I'm excited about. I'm glad to still be here, of course, but I find I have less and less to live for with every passing year. My bones ache, my kids live far away, and the other side of my bed has been empty for just over 8 months now. In fact, once I cast my vote against that goddamned Trump this November, I may have nothing to live for at all. So spare
So,
me your.
what is this? Is this story from like 2016 then?
This story is from 5 years ago.
2016 or oh, like 2020. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a new one.
Yeah, I found a lot of the top stories, including another cheap plug. The story we did about something being in the woods was also one of the top stories. So maybe there's been like a little
Hmm.
resurgence on YouTube or something, and people are going to the subreddit a lot. So I found that kind of weird because I expect all the older like legacy stories to be way higher.
Yeah, I figured it would be stuff like Baraska and
Mm-hmm.
1999, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right. So back to this goddamned Trump. Once he casts his vote, he'll have nothing to live for at all. So spare me your happy birthdays and your congratulations, if you please. I'm here because I have a story for you, and it's one I've never told before. I used to think I kept it inside because it was silly or maybe because no one would believe it. I found, though, the older you grow, the more exhausting it becomes to lie to yourself. If I'm being perfectly honest, I've never told anybody this story because it scares me, almost to death. But death seems friendlier than it used to, so listen close.
That's a hard line.
The year was 1950. The setting, a small town in Maine. I was a boy of 9, rather small for my age, with only one friend in the world to speak of. And his family, seemingly on a whim, decided to move 2,000 miles away. It was shaping up to be the worst summer of my life. My pop wasn't around, and my mom was a chore, derogatory term that rhymes with chore. Boy, was I proud of myself when I came up with that one, so I wasn't apt to hang around the house. With some hesitation, I decided the public library was the place to be that summer. The library's collection of books, particularly children's books, was meager to say the least. But within the walls of that miserly structure, I would find no undone chore, no nagging mother, God rest her soul, and perhaps most importantly, no other children with whom I expect to be an associate. I was the only kid with low enough social status to spend his precious days of freedom sulking amid the bookshelves, and that was just fine with me. The other half of my summer was even more dreadful than I imagined it would be. I would sleep in until 10, do my chores, then ride my bike to the library. And by bike, I mean rusty log of crap attached to a pair of wheels. Once there, I would split my time between unintentionally annoying the elderly patrons and deliberately doing so. One pleasant lady actually interrupted my incessant tongue clicking to hiss, "Shut the fuck up!" at me the first time I ever heard the grown up use of the F word. Big fucking deal, I know, but in those days it was unheard of. The dreary days turned to woeful weeks, and I actually begun praying for school to start again, until I discovered the basement. I could have sworn I've roamed every inch of that library, but one day in a far corner behind the foreign language collection, I stumbled across a wooden door that I'd never seen before. That's where it all began.
Interesting. I
Hmm.
like I like the idea of I don't know, I like the idea of a horror story being set in a library. I was a big fan of libraries as a child, so I feel like I'm a fan of that.
A lot of hallways.
Yeah. I also feel like a library in what the hell year is this? 1950?
Yeah,
That's probably scary.
probably all wooden. And people like detectives come there to look at government documents and old newspapers, and they use that like light box where you put it up,
Yeah,
and you know what I'm
yeah.
talking about.
Hmm.
You know the ones. We've
Oh, I
seen the
know the one.
movies. We've seen Saw 4 or whatever.
It almost gives like you remember the scene in the It remake where I think Ben was his name. He goes into the back room of the library or something, and there was like a he was like reading about like little kids with eggs or something like that, and a headless kid just comes down the stairs with the eggs. Do you remember that?
No,
It's like the
I'm gonna
scariest
be
part of that
honest.
movie.
I don't remember that at all. I guess
That was like the one thing that stuck with me.
that movie didn't stay with me. What that did remind me of was the scene in John Wick where he kills Boban Marjanovic, NBA superstar Bojan Marjanovic, the 7'3" man in the library. That was pretty sick.
Mm, yeah.
I don't remember how he did it, but I remember it was very funny. Libraries fuck.
You're just not supposed to do anything in the library, so I feel like when you do something, it feels like you're cool.
Exactly. The door was windowless and made of oak that looked far older than the wall on which it rested. It had a knob of black metal that quite literally looked ancient. I wouldn't have been surprised to learn it was crafted in the 17th century. Engraved on the knob is what appeared to be a single footprint. I had the sense that whatever lay beyond this door was forbidden to me, and therefore probably the most interesting thing I would encounter all summer. I quickly glanced around to make sure no one was watching me, then I turned the heavy knob, slipped behind the door, and shut it. There was nothing, only darkness. I took a couple of steps and then stopped, unnerved by the totality of the shadow which surrounded me. I waved my hands in front of me in an attempt to find a wall or a shelf or anything to hold on to. What I actually found was far more subtle, a small string dangling from above, but far more useful. I grabbed it and firmly pulled down. Back in my day, lots of light bulbs were operated with strings, and this was one of them. My surroundings were instantly illuminated. I was standing on a small, dusty platform that looked as though it hasn't seen life in quite some time. To my left was a crickety ass spiral case, made of wood and appearing ready to collapse at any second. The bulb was the only source of light in the room, and it was feeble. So when I peered over the railing to see what lay below, the bottom of the staircase dissolved into the darkness. I was beginning to feel scared. This place, wherever I was, seemed to have no business in a town library. It was as though I were in a completely different building. But no 9-year-old likes to let mystery go unsolved. Looking back, I wish I could tell my prepubescent self to turn around, go back, and do anything else beside descending that staircase. You'll be spared a lot of sleepless nights, I'd say. But of course, I didn't know that then, and I may not have listened if I had.
Nah, as a grown adult, I would have kept going. I
Yeah,
don't think it has anything to do with him being 9 years old. I would have kept going.
I think I would act if I ever found myself in a situation. I have been in not exactly like this, but like there's this one trail going into the big mountain system near us.
Hmm.
Like we kind of live like in a town near this gigantic mountain range, and there's this area that goes up into it where you're just at the beginning of it. And there's
Mm.
this horrifying story about this cemetery, and there'll be ghosts walking at night. And we walked it one time, and it's this muddy path that's like it's a horrible, treacherous walk for like 4 miles.
Ugh.
And we kept seeing lights in the woods, and I was so scared I wanted to turn around. And then eventually these dudes in these huge pickup trucks drove by, and they were like trying to fucking prank us, and they were like screaming behind. It was horrifying.
That's
And then we eventually made friends with them. They let us in the back of their truck and drove us to the graves. And there were these little lights dangling down. So that's what we were seeing the whole time. But I thought it was a ghost, and I was like, I'm noping out of here. So I think
that,
if I was in the situation, I would have noped out of there. He might not have listened if his past self got to tell him, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." So instead of turning back, I took a deep breath, gripped the railing, and glared forward as I began my descent. The wood on the railing was dry and covered with splinters. I immediately let go, holding my hands out for balance as I carefully traversed the staircase. It was, or at least it seemed, very long. And with only the dim glow of the string bulb far above me, my heart pounded in the darkness. Even kids can sense when something isn't right. I think they just don't always give a shit. By the time my feet reached the cement floor at the bottom, the light from the bulb was nearly a memory. But there was a new light source, and God, I'll never forget it. Directly in front of me, there was a door, massive, and a deep red shade coming from it. The light was coming from behind the door and shone out in thin lines from all four sides. A sinister, dimly glowing rectangle. For the second time, I took a deep breath and went through the door. I shouldn't have. In contrast to the dank room, the dank room is awesome. In contrast to the dank room I entered from, the room behind the door was blinding. When my eyes adjusted, what I saw nearly took my breath away. It was a library! The most perfect library imaginable. Well, this is a great story.
There's just a library and a
Yeah,
library.
he found a library. Yeah, he found a library. All
Good for
for
him.
him. Yeah. I gasped in wonder as I stepped, almost reverently, into the other room. It was beautiful. It was smaller than the library above, much smaller, but it seemed to be almost tailor-made for me. The shelves were packed with brightly colored tiles, both armchairs in the middle of the room were exquisitely comfortable, and the smell, my god, the smell was simply unbelievable. Sort of a mixture of citrus and pine. I simply can't do it justice with words, so I'll suffice to say that I've never smelled anything better, not in my 75 years. What was this room? Why have I never heard of it before? Why was nobody else here? Those were the questions I should have been asking, but I was intoxicated. As I gazed around at all the books and I basked in the smell of paradise, I can only have one thought. I will never be bored again. In truth, boredom only hid from me for 3 years. It was my 12th birthday, 63 years ago to this day. That changed everything. Before that day, I visited my basement sanctuary as often as I could, usually several times a week. I never saw another soul down there, yet strangely remained free of suspicion. I never removed a book from that room, but instead would pick up a particular volume wherever I had stopped reading from my previous visit. I
There's
sat.
there's I know it's like 1950, or at this point it's like 1953,
Mhm.
but there's gotta be a librarian. What the hell is she thinking when this kid just walks in and just disappears?
Just enters the
Or
gallows.
yeah, you just see him doing it like the little he's doing like a little bit where you just see him like getting lower and lower as he's like walking down past the bookshelf, and then he just comes up like in like 5 hours later and he's like bloop, 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 bloop.
He
He's
smells like
like,
pine.
have a good one. Yeah, he smells like pine. His clothes are stained red
Like,
from the lighting.
see you next week, nuts.
Yeah.
I sat always in the same deep purple armchair, and always leaving its twin barren across from myself. The armchair was mine. The other was, well, I suppose I couldn't have articulated it then much better than I can now, but it wasn't mine, that's for damn sure. On my 12th birthday, I arrived later than usual. My mom had invited a couple classmates and some cousins over to our house to celebrate, a gesture which I found more tedious than touching, really. I just wanted to spend my birthday sitting and reading and smelling paradise. Eventually, our guests went home and I made it to the library with about 15 minutes before closing. That didn't matter. The workers never checked down there before they locked up. I was free to stay as late as I wished. This particular night, I was devouring the final chapters of an epic adventure. Knights, swords, dragons, and the like. I didn't
Sick.
smell it. Super sick, may I add. If you were wondering,
Like this is a good 12th birthday.
I think that's pretty sick.
I don't know what could have gone wrong to cause this guy to be so upset about that.
Could have threw some goblins in there to make it a little cooler, but
That
that'll
would,
do.
yeah, we'll let it slide.
I didn't smell it until I read the final words and closed the book. The once exquisite aroma of that room turned sour. I sat for a moment unsettled. Objectively, I could recognize that the smell was actually the same as it's been before, that mixture of citrus and pine. But I just perceived it differently, and I didn't like it anymore. It was the nasal version of an optical illusion, you know? The one that looks like a young woman glancing backwards, but all of a sudden you see it's really an old woman facing toward you. You can't unsee that, and I couldn't unsmell this. The spell was broken. The odor also seemed for the first time to be coming from somewhere specific. With a fair amount of trepidation, I stalked around the room, sniffing the air like a crazed canine until I came to a shelf near the back. The shelf was perfectly normal, with the exception of one title, a large leather-bound cover of a solid faded maroon, with one striking black footprint above the top of its spine. This was the source of the smell. I opened the front cover and saw one sentence scrawled neatly in blood red ink atop the first page. Rest your sorrows down, friend, and leave them where they lie. I don't know what that voice was.
Was it the Renaissance Fair?
I stared at the sentence, mesmerized as I became to retreat to my chair. I turned a page, blank. The smell became stronger. Another page, blank. The smell grew stronger still. I stopped for a moment, suppressed a gag, and continued walking. Then I neared the armchairs. I turned one final page, and there, in the same sinister print was the last thing I expected to see. My own name. I dropped the book and began to sprint toward the door, but as I shifted my gaze forward, my heart leapt to my throat and I stopped in my tracks. The empty chair wasn't empty anymore.
Interesting.
And
So he flipped and saw himself. Was it a death note?
who knows? It may be. Let's find out. The empty chair wasn't empty anymore. An aged man in a suit sat before me, one leg crossed over the other, contemplating me with piercing gray eyes and a light smirk. This was all too much. I fell to my knees and expelled the contents of my stomach onto the carpet. I wiped my mouth, staring at my vomit, when I heard the man let out a chuckle. I stared at him disbelievingly. "Who are you?" I asked in my panicked voice. The man leapt to his feet and grabbed me gently by the shoulders and helped me to my chair. "I fear we've gotten off to a bad start."
You sound like JFK in Clone High. I fear. I
I
fear we
fear.
have gotten off.
I fear we've gotten off to a bad start, he said, glancing at the pile of sick on the carpet.
The pile of sick is crazy. What a gross, weird statement.
The smell. It does take some getting used to. "Who are you?" I repeated. "Tonight you will know hardship like you've never known before," he said. "I come as a friend offering you refuge from it, and from all the other storms which lie ahead." I wanted nothing more than to leave at that moment, but I remained seated. I asked him what he was talking about. "Your mother is dead, my boy, by her own hand in the kitchen. The scene is gruesome, I must admit," he said in sorrowful tones, but there was a playful glint in his eye. "Surely you wish to avoid this path. I can show you a safer one." My blood ran cold at the horrors this man spoke of, but I did not believe him. "What do you want with me?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I actually felt. He laughed, an old raspy yelp that seemed to shake him to the bones. "Nothing but your friendship, dear boy," he said. Sensing I found his answer inadequate, he expounded. "I want you to come on a journey with me. My work is noble and you'll make a fine apprentice, and maybe when I'm done," he sighed tiredly, running his bony fingers through his thin white hair, "maybe then my work can be yours." I stood, shuffling toward the door but never breaking his gaze. "You're crazy," I told him. "My mom isn't dead. She's not." "See for yourself if you must," he said, gesturing toward the door. I threw him a glare and bolted for the exit. As my hand closed around the knob, he said my name softly. In spite of myself, I turned around. "Your road won't be easy, friend. If it ever becomes too much for you, and I mean ever," he said, pausing to sweep his hand over the room, "you know where to find me." I slammed the door behind me and took the decrepit stairs two at a time. I exited the library, clambered onto my bike, and hightailed it home. The front door was wide open. I dismounted, leaving my bike in the heap on the ground, and approached the house cautiously. The old man was lying. He must have been. Still, tears began to sting my eyes. Heart pounding, I stepped inside and called for my mother. I heard no answer, so I turned to the kitchen. To this day, I don't know why she did it. I lived in that small town in Maine my entire life. Although I've kept mostly clear of the public library, once in my late 20s, I summoned the courage to step inside. Life was good at the time. My fear had begun to morph into idle curiosity. Where the basement door sanctuary once stood was only a blank wall. I asked the librarian what had become of the basement, though in my heart I knew the answer. "There was no basement," she said. "There's never been a basement. In fact, if she told her facts correctly, city zoning ordinance prohibited a basement in the area." I've been haunted by the sickly sweet smell, the poisonous blend of citrus and pine, ever since that birthday long ago. When I saw my mother in the kitchen that day collapsed on the floor in her own blood, I smelled it. When a man claiming to be my father knocked on my college apartment door, begged me for money and beat me within an inch of my life. When I refused, I smelled it. When my wife miscarried our second child, I smelled it. Again when she miscarried on our fourth. When our oldest son got behind the wheel of the family Buick, completely shit-faced and got his girlfriend killed, I smelled it. I began to smell it periodically as my wife became sick. She died late last year, and now I'm alone for the first time in more than half a century. Now I smell it every day, and it feels like an invitation. A few months ago, I went back to the library, and that small oak door with the ancient handle was there, right where it used to be. My evening walk has brought me past that library every day since, but I haven't gone inside. Maybe tonight I will. I'm frightened to die, yes, but lately I've been even more frightened to keep living. The old man was right. My road hasn't been easy, and I doubt it will get any easier. "Rush your sorrows down, friend, and leave them where they lie." He promised relief. A refuge, he said. Was he right about that too? There's only one way to find out after all. And I still know where to find him. And that's the story!
So it's got to be a demon, right?
Yeah, it's the devil for show.
I thought there was going to be more of a sting at the end, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think I had to let myself think about it for a second a little bit because I don't know. I don't know what I thought I was hyping up. Like I feel like I thought he was gonna like stumble into like kidnapped people down there, or some
Mm-hmm.
crazy shit.
That was
Like
my first
something
thought.
yeah, super wild, but it was the devil.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very interesting and a little confusing that the door shows up like when times are hard and he's upset.
I think it's because it's like it's he said one time's like time your life is gonna be rough and I'm always here for you. So and like anytime something bad does happen. Because based on both the comments and just kind of what I'm gathering from it, it seems like the old man is like the Reaper, like he's death himself.
Yeah.
And so anytime something bad happens, it's like, all right, here's your chance to become me.
Yeah, I get that. But I feel like wouldn't you want the door to always be there kind of
Yeah,
thing?
I feel
Like it
you.
seems weird that it goes away when things aren't necessarily bad. 'Cause like even if it's not like a Reaper like you were saying, but just from like a deal with the devil kind of perspective,
Mm-hmm.
when times are good, a lot of people would also make deals to make them better.
Yeah,
Like you get
that's true.
greedy. Like if like someone's like a movie star and they're starting to get famous, they'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, take me all the way to the top.
Yeah, that's true.
And it does also make me question why the door showed up in the first place.
Because he had no friends.
Is that like enough to make a fucking deal with the devil?
According to the devil, it is. You know, things get crazy in Maine, according to Mr. Stephen King. So
Yeah, I guess so, but
I don't know, I like how it was really well written.
it was very well written.
I wasn't well
Um,
read, but it was well written, let me
it
tell
was
you.
well written for sure. Lots of big words.
Yeah, I skipped a
Um,
couple.
I like the idea of it. I just feel like they would have clarified a couple more things of it, you know what I mean?
That's always how these go, isn't it?
Yeah. And to anyone who is still listening, we are also currently working on more content that is not just scary stories,
Yes.
just all things spooky. So definitely, if you're still watching, you get the insider knowledge.
Yeah, we're gonna
All
try to
right.
do live streams of us like we were like playing Dead by Daylight. Outlast Trials is a big one. Just a lot of the horror games. Even maybe some Fortnite and stuff here and there. But we're just gonna try
Yeah,
to put out more content. Maybe we'll have topics and just talk about different horror movies or whatever's going on in the world on those. So we're probably gonna be posting clips as well on the YouTube channel because why not? I mean, it'll be fun. I don't know.
definitely. Follow us on TikTok too.
Yes, on there we
Studios of EEK.
are posting random content about scary stuff. There, nothing too specific, but if you do like the genre, you should like that.
Definitely horror reviews, horror news, clips from videos that have come out. Maybe at some point we're gonna start doing clips from upcoming videos and stuff like that, exclusive clips that aren't in the video.
Yes, sir. What do you rate it, Declan?
All right. I was thinking about this.
Oh, were you?
So, on a scale from a SpongeBob popsicle with the gumball eyes
Okay.
to a kids' cuisine TV dinner, I'd give it a nice Danimals little Go-Gurt cup. The ones that
Okay.
you would enter to win playgrounds for your schools.
Absolutely. I dig that.
So
Uh,
there you go.
I'll say on a scale of Jurassic Park to Jurassic World, I'd give it a Big Daddy 2.
There it is. You heard the man.
That's our official review. Very official, very important, very valid. So, thank you so much for watching this video. It's
Yeah.
very nice of you.
And if you have any suggestions, let us know in the comments. We are definitely
Yes,
open to them.
I would love to get story suggestions as well.
Shit, we should start saying that at the beginning of the
Yeah,
videos.